Your pizza pockets are ready. There's no school tomorrow, and you have permission to stay up late. The year's 2023. You're 38 years old, and a new skip has just been found in Mario Kart 64. One of the most unlikely shortcuts has just been hit in Bowser's Castle, and it's so rare that it may never be hit again. Today we'll break down how the skip works and see what it took for one person to make history. I hope you enjoy today's video. To get a good understanding of the skip and what it does, let's start with an overview of Bowser's Castle, as the non-shortcut fast lap has a lot of intricacies that need to be explained. Since this is a fast lap, you'll save all 3 shrooms that the game gives you in time trials until lap 2. The reason you don't drive a fast lap on lap 1 is because it's faster to be moving over the finish line to start the attempt than to use the start boost on lap 1, because the start boost takes time to accelerate to top speed. After the bridge, you'll be in the courtyard where you're supposed to use the stone path to get to the other door, as cutting across the grass applies a speed penalty since it's off-road terrain. However, when using a shroom, the penalty is ignored, so the first shroom is used here. It's worth noting that this is the strongest spot for a shroom on the entire map due to how much time it saves, which is estimated to be about a full second, which is 4 or 5 times the amount of time the other shroom spots save, as we'll see later. Leaving the courtyard, you enter a hallway with some thwomps, and a very special green thwomp named Marty. Leave your theories down below as to why he's in jail. The thwomps just need to be avoided, but the important mechanic in this room is the mini turbo. Mini turbos are the bread and butter of Mario Kart. To do one, you press R, then countersteer on the control stick until the smoke coming off your tires turns red. Then, you release the stick, and you'll get a small speed boost, indicated by your character shouting. However, in this hallway, things need to be done a bit differently at high-level play. Because the corners on the doorways are 90 degrees, it's actually faster to line up a mini turbo before the turn, so that when you release it, you immediately jump. This is significantly faster than driving around the corner when touching the ground, as seen on this task by Weatherton. The ghost doesn't jump, and the character taking the same line gains a bit of distance over it. This brings us to the second thwomp hall, but this time, there are a pair of thwomps that will follow your cart and try to squash you when you enter the room. These can be a nuisance when doing time trials, but there is a strategy that deals with them entirely. It's common to run against a ghost when doing time trials to help gauge how close you are to improving your personal best. But on Bowser's Castle, the ghost can be used to distract the thwomps by driving into a corner so that they squish the ghost instead of following the player. This makes it very easy to do mini turbos without having to worry about what line you need to take to avoid the extra thwomps, with the next 3 rooms involving more sharp corners where you need to use the new mini turbo jump strategy before you arrive at the stairs. For the last 25 years, players arrived at the stairs and drove down them, but that changed in 2021 when Weatherton discovered that if you drop down to the first step, then do a jump, you'll actually gain more speed than by driving them normally. This is because you gain more speed while falling large distances in the air than you would dropping from stair to stair. But this wasn't the only change Weatherton made. Because you're jumping off the stairs, you can continue holding R and land into a slide at the bottom, which led to an optimization with the second shroom spot. Prior runs would drive through the grass, then shroom as they got close to the next corner, which was faster than driving on the track. But since Weatherton landed in a slide, he could jump onto the grass to preserve some speed while in the air, and then use the shroom as soon as he lands. This saves time since you are boosting over a larger section of the grass to ignore the speed penalty, and at the end of the hallway, you'll jump over another section of grass while cutting a corner for a small time save, and enter the last shroom spot on the course, the upward spiral. You'll want to hit the shroom as you enter the straight section leading into the spiral, because the turn is so tight that you can't take it without hitting the side of the wall, which impacts the top speed of the cart, which you can see hovers around 60 instead of the usual 70. After the spiral is complete, there's a straight section with a small gap jump and another hop around a sharp corner to finish the race, with the current fast lap record being a 35.75, held by Matthias. Looking at Bowser's Castle, it's surprising that a shortcut hasn't been found on it much sooner, as it has all of the elements for one to be present. Sections of the track are very close together, like the Marty Room and Lava Bridge, and it's full of out-of-bounds hazards for potential Lakitu exploits. But despite all of this, nothing was found over the last 26 years. In particular, there's one section of the track that didn't see much exploration for skips, and that's the stairs. But with solid walls on each side of the gap, it wasn't likely that anything would be found. But that all changed in 2021 when Force64 uploaded this clip. And to understand what's going on, a close inspection of how walls work in Mario Kart 64 is in order. Walls in Mario Kart are typically quite solid, but if you really want to break the walls down, then this video's sponsor War Thunder has you covered. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, with over 2,000 tanks, planes, ships, and helicopters that you can pilot in multiplayer PvP combat. A ton of detail is put into the vehicles, with each of their individual parts being modeled for a super immersive combat experience. With the game being available on PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and the previous console generation. The game applies damage quite uniquely. Instead of generic hit points and health bars, damage accrues dynamically, with the X-ray UI showing precisely what's being broken. And if you like customization, don't worry. The game includes a system so you can apply hundreds of decals and camouflages to help save time using the historical accuracy skip. Okay, maybe you don't save time, but you do look really cool. One of my favorite things is the versatility of the vehicles. If you're having trouble dealing with aircraft and don't want to engage in aerial combat yourself, you can use anti-aircraft vehicles to avoid time loss. By using my link to play War Thunder, you get a large free bonus pack that includes multiple premium vehicles, the premium account perk, boosters, and much more. So use my link on Xbox, PC, or PlayStation, and I'll see you in the thick of it. And with that, let's get back to the walls of Mario Kart. When you drive into a flat wall, there are a few checks the game makes that stop you from passing through it. The wall has a hitbox that is the length of 4 karts, with a kart being 5.5 units long, so 22 units for a standard wall. Only a quarter of the hitbox is on the side facing the player, with the rest of it being on the other side of the wall, so you can't actually touch a wall. The closest you can get is a kart length away. In order to bypass the wall entirely, you'd need to be going fast enough so that on one frame you're in front of the wall, and on the next frame you're past the wall's entire hitbox. If you select the game's fastest mode, 150cc, and use a star, the speed you reach still won't be enough to accomplish this. So without hacks, it's impossible to drive through a wall. If you've watched other videos on my channel, you may be thinking, wait a minute, aren't there cases where players have driven through walls? And you would be correct, with those being the Calamari Desert fence clip and the Mario Raceway wall clip. For Calamari Desert, the wall players are clipping through isn't normal, it's actually double-sided. Double-sided walls have a strong side and a weak side. When approaching from the weak side, the wall only pushes with the outside hitbox, which is the length of a kart. And it's been known for some time that you can use a shroom to get through the weak side fairly easily, such as going from the outside of the KD fence to the inside. The strong side is another story. It has 4 full kart lengths of hitbox trying to keep you in, and as we covered earlier, it's not possible, even with a star, to go through 4 kart lengths in a single frame. But there is an exception. If you land on the exact middle of the fence on one frame, the game counts you as being on both sides of the wall, and won't push you as you continue through the rest of the hitbox on the next frame. However, this trick is floating point precise, which means your position needs to be exact to several decimal places, and only 2 people have managed to hit the trick to this day.
4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh! No!
The Mario Raceway clip is a bit different. The walls are both normal, but due to how they are angled, the hitboxes get oriented in such a way that it's possible to clip through with a shroom if you take the proper line. You do need to jump in order to make the gap, but this trick is a lot more forgiving than the Calamari Desert fence clip. Walls in Mario Kart can get quite complex, and if you want an in-depth breakdown on them, I suggest watching this video by Bismuth. But for now, we've learned enough to investigate Bowser's Castle, so let's unpack the new skip. Looking at the stair section, we see a total of 3 walls that all intersect. The wall at the top of the stairs, the wall on the side of the stairs, and the wall on the upright part of the step, which we'll be calling upper, lower, and upright. If we focus on where the lower and upright walls intersect, we see that it forms a corner where there is a large opening in the hitbox on the other side, similar to Mario Raceway. The reason the opening is here is because the hitbox for the low wall doesn't continue when it intersects the upright wall. But unfortunately, if we measure the diagonal, it's about 7.7 units long, which is just large enough that you can't clip through it even with a shroom, so it's a no-go for time trials. Looking at the upper wall's hitbox, we see that it has the standard 1 cart length sticking out from the wall, which can be clipped through with a shroom, but it has an additional 3 cart lengths on the other side that prohibit any clipping. It appeared as though these walls were solid, but Forest 64 would find a clever workaround in 2021. Forest is a prominent tasser of the game and is responsible for finding many of the recent skips, and his discovery on this track was quite genius. Looking at the upper wall's hitbox, he realized that if you jumped from the upper step and transitioned to a lower step on the next frame, that you could clip out to the other side. This is possible because on the first frame, you're set to collide with the upper wall, which has a buffer distance of 5.5 units. And on the next frame, you drop down to a lower step, where with the proper angle, you can cover the distance to get outside. There are 2 big interactions at play that make this work. The first is that the hitboxes for the upright and lower walls don't extend beyond where they intersect. The second reason is because the frame you arrive at the lower step, the upright wall's hitbox gets ignored because you're transitioning to a lower step on the same frame you'll be clipping out. This is a 3-dimensional clip, so you may be having some trouble visualizing what it looks like, and this graphic by Abney that depicts the line you need to take should help in that regard. So let's recap the requirements for hitting the trick. Because of the precise positioning, not only does the jump you do need to be frame perfect, but it's also required, since you won't make it to the other side if you don't. Additionally, you'll need to be coming out of a mini turbo to meet the speed requirements, as the top speed of the kart isn't enough, with most runners opting to use a shroom instead due to there being a risk of tumbling if you hit the clip using only a mini turbo. Furthermore, this trick only saves about 2 seconds since it's only skipping a small section, which doesn't leave time to do a setup. And if you're wondering how they make it through the wall on the other side, it's because walls only have collision active if you're hitting them from inside of the course. The odds of hitting this were estimated to be better than the KT fence, which were theorized to be 1 in 90,000 if you were YOLOing the setup, or 1 in 15,000 if you took a few seconds to get a better position. And when Forest released the skip in 2021, the community got to work on trying to hit it. Despite the supposed better odds, from the time Forest released the skip in July through to the end of the year, nobody would hit the clip for a new world record. Abney would prove that it was possible by game sharking his position, then hitting the jump, and notwithstanding a community effort of streamed attempts leading up to the game's 25th anniversary, no successes would be seen. Through all of 2022, the skip wouldn't see anyone land a successful attempt either. People were starting to question if this had better odds than the fence clip, given that nobody had hit it yet, which brings us to 2023. Over the course of the previous year, Forest had put in 50 hours of attempts, and starting in January, he resumed his grind. Attempt after attempt, he mindlessly drove into the wall. Bonk after bonk after bonk. Reset after reset after reset. It was starting to look like this wasn't possible at all. March 11th, 2023 would be the date that this skip was finally hit. It took Forest over 200 hours of grinding and 20,000 attempts to hit it, but he made history, because not only did he hit the clip, he beat the non-shortcut time by 0.4 of a second, meaning this was an official skip. It's often said in speedrunning that there's no such thing as an unbeatable record, but given how hard this is to hit, and the fact that it took 2 years for one person to land a successful attempt, it was a big surprise that this would be beaten 2 days later. Forest wasn't the only one driving attempts. Soft Syrup had grinded the clip for about 18 hours last year, and after Forest hit it, he resumed the grind, putting in 1.5 hours the same day. On the 13th of March, he started an offline session, and sure enough, after 3 hours and about a seventh of the time Forrest put in, Soft Syrup would hit the clip. Forrest stated in his record that he lost about a second due to his driving, and Soft Syrup would set a 33.81, beating Forrest by a second and a half. Soft Syrup is a top 30 player, so it's reasonable that this record will only be improved by one of the top players in the game. But like Forrest's record, it did have some room for improvement. In the room with the thwomps that chase you, there's another set blocking the exit. At high levels of play, the optimal line is to go between them, but this runs the risk of a bonk, which means resetting, so rather than lose attempts, Soft Syrup opted to go around them instead. The clip itself was clean, but on the landing he bonked the wall, and despite a good recovery, it still cost some time. And going over the gap in the final stretch, it's more efficient to start charging a mini turbo and release it when you land. But Soft Syrup was too nervous to try this, so he did the MT after landing, which did cause a small bonk. Overall, the lap is very strong, but it can be beaten. And if you think the story ends here because you heard my outro music, let me pause it. Because someone else hit the clip. Not wanting to miss the hype, Jablonski would stream attempts as well, and on March 14th, he'd become the third person in 3 days to hit the skip. He clocked in a time of 34.22, which is slower than Soft Syrup's record, but since Aaron drove on the NTSC version of the game, and his time is faster than Forrest's, he holds the NTSC record, with Soft Syrup holding the overall record. So what's the future of this lap? There's only one big improvement that could happen, and that's if a reliable setup is found for players to get null tires off the bridge at the start. By swinging the cart over the bridge, it's possible to get into a state called null tires, where they ignore the speed penalty in off-road sections, with it lasting until you jump again. This is currently TAS only, as it involves getting the cart below the bridge, then getting pulled back up by an interesting physics interaction. But who knows? If the stair clip has shown anything, it should be that anything is possible when it comes to Mario Kart. You might be wondering what this means for the 3-lap time. Let's assume that you use a shroom on the first lap for the clip. This means you lose 1 second by not cutting the grass at the start, but gain 2 seconds by hitting a clean clip, so you're +1 overall. In theory, this would beat the non-shortcut record, but you'd have to be capable of driving near world record times, otherwise the 1 second time save won't set a faster record. But let's take it a step further and look at what a fully optimal attempt for the 3-lap would be. The clip is possible by using a mini turbo, but as I mentioned, you run the risk of tumbling between the walls. But let's assume that someone going for a 3 out of 3 stair clip is also a maniac and will be using the mini turbo method. The mini turbo clip would save them 2 seconds on each lap for a total of 6 seconds, which lets you use the shrooms to cut the courtyard grass, saving another 3. But that's already in the non-shortcut record, so they'd net 6 seconds overall, which would make getting a world record more realistic, except for the fact that this has only been hit 3 times in 2 years. If a 3-lap shortcut record does get driven, it'll likely be a single clip by a top player, as a lap with 2 or 3 stair clips may never be seen, unless a better setup is found. With the stair clip being hit, this only leaves 3 tracks in the game that don't have a skip. And if you'd like to learn more about them, check out this video detailing the efforts that have been made to break them. And don't forget that when you play War Thunder using my link, you get a starter pack with huge bonuses. So click the link in the description or pinned comment to claim your reward, and I'll see you in the game. And if you want to support the channel, be sure to check out my Patreon, where Tier 2 subscriptions currently have a 1-month free trial. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.